Hello everyone, how you doing today? Well, it's Friday. Tallied up all the votes and whatnot, and I do have a winner now. I did a recount, so I did it twice just to make sure I was sure. So, final tally on the name of the space carrier that you're not seeing in the view right now is Leviathan got 18 votes. Praetorian got 14 votes. So it is Leviathan. It was close actually. That's why I recounted it a second time. I missed one on the first count, and it was even closer. Really appreciate all the votes though in the names. Obviously, rename it to anything you like if you decide to use the ship, but that's how it came out in the end. So, official name MCRN Leviathan SC, which I think I'm going to call it Super Carrier. Originally, I was going to call that Space Carrier, but the fact is, it can fly in the atmosphere. Although I'll put a lot of information about that on the post. On it's not recommended to fly in the atmosphere, especially if you're carrying a lot of weight or the atmosphere is above 1G. So there is that. And then I had this weird bug. The whole thing like shrunk. I don't know what happened here. It's like barely bigger than the Pioneer right now. So I'm just so confused. No, I'm just being stupid. And I just wanted to see what it looked like if it was converted to a SV. And this is kind of what it looks like if it was converted to an SV. So it's still pretty big. In fact, still longer and whatnot than an actual CV that has 4 times bigger blocks on it. So there is that. Well, anyway, here let me kick on some HUD here, and let's go over to the carrier itself, which is kind of up in the air above here. Oh, I'll show you that real quick, and then I was going to try to get some more work done on this here and try to get to part two. Goals would be to finish a body and maybe even begin texturing on it in Skaar type texturing. As in the carrier, there we go. There we go. Um, a lot more has been done. I'm still this is going to be day 3 here of working on LCDs on the thing. I still don't have them all finished, but I have added a number of LCDs, probably about 40 or so since last time I showed the carrier. And I've been doing some other transitional things too. To start with, I think how it came out in the end here. I'll clear that HUD away again. For elevator signs, they're pretty much looking like this. And that's not too far off from what it was before. I did a little bit more spacing on things and whatnot. So you'll see that in all sorts of places on the ship. Other things I've been doing too, well, you'll see more LCDs in other various locations too. Actually all over the place. Um, been working on some transitions. Essentially, I've been rebuilding a little bit of some interior parts to transition into other parts. For instance, now the UNN area has a facing um, from the cafeteria or the mess hall, and I kind of changed some other things around, added in all kinds of different signs for various things here, like the Martian pub. Um, and just some overall directory signs in a lot of places. Let's see, let me get up to the farm here a minute. There's another area up here that I kind of changed around a little bit, made a bit of a transition from the traditional color scheme here of the MCRN going into uh, Arboretum, if I said that right. I'm trying, really trying. It's just a word that I've never said in my life, honestly. Never even knew it existed. But it's cool. I use a lot of words like that myself. So I made a new LCD for that as well. Um, there's a lot of other LCDs, a lot of other tweaks throughout the ship. I'm going to reserve on showing anything more, and an announcement as well. Saturday at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Uh, Excalibur and whatnot is going to do a live stream on showing this ship. So it's going to be a big walkthrough. I'll be there too. But we're going to go tour the ship, take a look at it. I don't want to release the ship Saturday. Sunday, I'm thinking would give me some time to work on the everything else, and I have a feeling once I do a walkthrough kind of in that manner, I'll probably find more things I'll want to tweak on this. But I've been really trying to jam to get everything done. So it's really close. Now there's two things I need to do LCD wise yet. One, I wanted to try to come up with a deck directory sign. In other words, if you're on, say, a deck in the back, it'll list like everything that's on that deck. I don't know though, because every deck would need it, and decks don't line up from front to back necessarily. So it'd be like rear deck or versus front deck. It gets confusing. It really does. So that's something I would like to do. And another thing too is I got to get an LCD in here listing all the authors that contributed and a little bit of information on what areas they did on the ship. But I think everything's getting really dialed in right now. Less and less texture screw-ups and problems I'm finding all over the place. So it's definitely getting there. Um, Now another thing, before I get going on this tank here, somewhere on the ground, there it is. Oh, it looks stinky. um, is I noticed that well, I watched the Spans video the other day too, and it had to do with the game going into or leaving alpha and going into beta, and also leaving early access. Now, he had some reservations on it, and I have to agree to. I wasn't expecting that. I guess because I just feel there's an awful lot of features that I thought were going to be added into the game yet, which would typically be in the alpha phase, as in beta is bug fixing, tweaking, polishing, all that fun stuff. But they, on the official note, they did say that they were still going to be working on like new features and other things. So I don't exactly know how to take it. Now there's a big feature that I know was in talked about for a long time, but it wasn't going to really happen until the game was like the official complete version, and that is to allow modding. Now I've been asked a couple times in comments, what mods do I use? Well, it's there are no mods. So I mean, if you call Blueprint Workshop things mods, well, that's one thing. But I mean, the mods that actually change the gameplay besides like a scenario that you can get. Now, those do mod the game. They can change things, they can change resources, they can change a lot of stuff around with scenarios. But I was thinking, mods. What would I think of as a mod? And I'd have to go and take a look at a big modding game like Skyrim, for instance. People are making their own stuff and their own textures and their this and that and weapons and new models brought into the game. Now that I can kind of consider modding. Um, this is this is creating a little bit different. So but the point in case is that is a feature I always wanted to see in the game, and I hopefully that it allows for modding. Now, what I would consider modding, at least on things I would like to do, is like, hey, what if I replace the textures? I've got textures. I've made a lot of textures for my own projects, and some nice ones I could actually put into the game if I could change the texture palette and use custom textures. That'd be really cool. Or build custom blocks for the game as well. There's quite a few different blocks I'd like to see in the game yet. One I know I pointed out a few times now that would allow a lot for a very simple low polygon block. Would give you a lot more options on what you could do with shaping and things. It's just something that's kind of missing in the fold right now. Um, but anyway, I'm not, it's I don't know exactly what to make of all of that. I guess we'll see what happens. But that would be really, really cool. And on another standpoint too. Now this is a indie game. They don't have a big crew. Um, like a person like myself, I bought this game on sale. I think it was like $15. Bought it several years ago now, and that's the only amount of money they have seen for me. So 15 bucks, and because it was purchased on Steam, I believe Steam takes like 30% of that or something like that. Um, so I mean, they made very very little money from me, and probably most people that play the game. Now, obviously, getting new people to buy the game is where the money's at, or being able to put out like a pay expansion or DLCs or something like that. Um, so the, I gotta assume that they probably would like to make some more money, and maybe this is a way to do that. I don't know exactly, but essentially, a game like this has so much potential. I mean, the space is the limit, on what you could actually do and keep on doing to this game. You could probably work on it for 20 years and still find more things to add to it. It's one of those kind of games, where it's I don't really ever want to see development stop on it, or if like say this is Imperium 1.0 and then they keep on working on it and even maybe even change the game engine at one point in time to something else, and then now you got Imperium 2. I could see that as well. That would be cool. But or just keep on making the first one better. But they got to find ways to make money from that too. So the only way they're really going to be able to do that is to have expansions or DLCs or something that people would have to pay for if they're into the game. Now, if they came out with a DLC and added all these new this and that and the other thing and textures and blocks and content and all kind of stuff, and it was like 10, 15 bucks, I'd be like, oh yeah, yeah, I'll buy that. I mean, obviously, I put like I don't even bazillions of hours into this thing. Why would I not buy the DLC for it? If it added good viable content, then felt worth the money. Um, I have no problems buying expansions to games I love, especially if they're well done and you don't feel ripped off. Like buy an expansion to Witcher 3 or something, and do you feel ripped off? Absolutely not. So that's how I'd like to see it go. Anyway, I'll shut up and quit mumbling about that stuff, and let's try to get the rest of this body work done on this tank. Now, right now, looking at it, because of all the qualifications and specs and turret placements and everything like that, I'm not getting a lot of creative things I can do with it because it's kind of a blob. I'm trying to obviously round things in a little bit, but this is going to be one of those builds, kind of like a miner to me. That's why I don't particularly like to build miners, because I can't do a lot with them, because they have to be very specific, and if it's too big, you're going to get stuck in tunnels, and if you don't have if you have blocks extending past the mining trails, that causes problems. So it's extremely limited. This is kind of limited, not as bad, but it is a bit limited. And that's purely because it's got to have all these guns in pretty much this kind of layout, and you just can only fluctuate so many things with it. But on comments too, it was also said that these things here can be moved back and they will still work. So that is something I definitely wanted to try out here. So that's where I'll start here. We'll just see how this works out. Should have had those equipped already. There we are. So let's say we now they might, I don't know if they can go back further than this. And here's what the troubling aspect for me is. And you know what? Let's test it. As I look at these blocks here, that these blocks are actually protruding past where these miners are. And to me, I think that would cause problems. technically speaking, but I bet you it probably doesn't actually. So let's try these things out here. All right. All right. Well, that answers that question. No problems whatsoever on that. Okay. Good deal. Good deal. I mean, could they even go back further? Maybe, but then I think I'm going to start messing with the structural integrity here of where the thrusters are and whatnot. So, all right, let's get symmetry rolling and start getting some more blocks on this thing. First thing I think I want to do is try to get in the right block here so this all lines up properly. So something like that and that. Okay, well, they're tucked away a little bit more. And one more experiment because I'm really curious. What happens if I actually took a block and ran it right in front of the miner? I mean, I don't intend on keeping this, but I'm just curious what if they would still mine, essentially. Here, I'm just going to cover the whole thing up. Here, go hit another tree real quick. It's just one of those things, you know, yeah, always curious on, whoops, on stuff here. Well, there's your answer. Yep, still does. So literally, these miners could be buried, technically. Oh, I guess I had one block that wasn't buried, but that I want to think that would make a difference. They could still be buried and work. I would think that kind of defies reality on how I kind of see it, but it is cool that that actually does still function that way. You know what? I'm not even lined up right here, am I? I got a mess here. I put in one miner not in the right spot. That needs to go there, and there should be a gap of one block between the two. Okay, that's better. Well, I'll leave that part there for now. Let's try to get the rest of this filled in here now. One other thought I had too, and I don't think it necessarily would have a great effect, but if I used a traditional cockpit up on top here, let me get those a minute, or armored cockpit, I could actually fit something in this middle section, especially if I went with a low riding one. Oh, that could be interestingly different on this build. One of these cockpits that I just don't really use much. But I guess the whole problem with all of this, though, is if you were operating the tank in first person at one of these, when you get out, it's going to throw you right up on the top of the tank. So if you happen to run into battle and then you decide you want to switch your cockpits, it's going to throw you in a really bad spot, probably where all the incoming base fire would be at, and then you would have to like climb around on top of this and maybe jump down a drone hatch, which will probably be in the back. But you'd also get the option of being able to operate this in first person as well. And I could make easy enough access to get to this from inside. Now this cockpit here is probably my least favorite, but it's the only one that's 2 blocks high, which in a case like this is quite imperative. I don't know. Or should I just keep it third person and not worry about this at all? Well, I'll think on that later on. So let's see, what can we do in the front here to try to add in something to look interesting? Don't have a lot of blocks to work with, or count-wise. Could try to taper that in again. Um, what I'm trying to do is seeing if having like a little indentation in here might look interesting or not. Something like that. Before, it's like I would consider it Skaar. Obviously, the texturing is going to have a lot to do with it, but I'm going to try to get a bunch of accents and weird Skaar things on here, some welded on parts and stuff. But it's going to be tough because I got to make sure I do not interrupt the turrets firing on their position, because that is key and the most important thing. So here we've got some indented thrusters as well. And that was another thing I wanted to look at too, is how the thrusters are spaced out. And it needs an awful lot of strafing thrusters on this build, far more than what the MCRN Ballista had, because I want it more maneuverable. Yeah. And I mean, I would love to come out and add some like trim over here or something like that, but I have a feeling that would make it, well, not necessarily hard to fit in hangars because the turret's already sticking out, but it would disrupt the turret firing. So that's something I don't want to do. Alright, well, let's just kind of fill in some of this stuff here a minute. See where it all comes out. And I need as many breakups on the body as I can get in here. So now this section over here, what can be done here? How about, well, again, not a lot of blocks to work with, but doesn't mean you can't do anything. This case is kind of a oldie, but works, is getting in some kind of vent, or once they're textured, they can kind of look like some kind of intake or something along those lines. And okay, let's just say that this, at this point, curves back in some. Okay, I think that could work. I don't know how much CPU I'm going to have when this is ready. I might have enough, but to add in possibly a couple multi-tool retractable turrets, which would undoubtedly go back in these positions here. I think they can fit. Yeah, it's a little still boring on the side here, but okay, so here we want to probably do something like this. Be nice if that would line up to that though, and that block isn't going to do it. There is another block that's pretty peculiar, but might work in this situation to add in something a little different. Okay. essentially speaking, if this area was left like that, at this position here, a retractable multi-turret could be placed. Or two. I'm not sure how much CPU these things are going to chew up, though. If I did put these on here, I'd also want to have a larger harvest bay. But, you know, they do fit alright. I can't really complain. I guess a big thing, though, is how are the thrusters going to look here. We need to get some block work here. I'm not even sure if I'm going to keep the thrusters in their order right now. I almost kind of want to separate these out a little bit more. So let's try that first, and then try to build block work around the thrusters. Say something like that instead. That gives a little bit of separation in between each. So what do we do with all this, though? Okay, so this, we got kind of an indentation in here, which is great. I kind of like having something like that. And then if it expanded out a little bit here at the start of the thrusters, just got to find the block that I think might look the best for that. Let's try one of these newer blocks. the new kind of new. Okay, so what do we do with this line here then? Could just kind of add something like that. And okay, so in the center area. Kind of need to have something different here. Or actually, you know what? Maybe simple's better. A thin strip. Or, oh no, we don't get those other parts with, I forget about that. Yeah, when you're doing CVs and bases, you get those, a few more block shapes. You don't get those on the HVs or SVs, though. Oops. Just trying to do something to try to build up blocks to accent these thrusters, but also seal the thrusters off. At least protected by a row of these combat steel blocks. Problem is, I don't think there is any block solution right there. I can make this nice and angly here, but there isn't anything that would go there if I use that block. Well, let's see what else can be done. I got a bit of a corner of a thruster exposed if I do something like that. That could also be altered, I suppose. Could try a different angle yet. Like that. Or really go out of the box and go with a curve. Like that. That is one thing I do like, though. Putting different blocks together, you can kind of come up with these shapes that are just different, I guess you could say. You know, whether you like them or not, they're just unique. Alright, so back here. Man. Sometimes I wish there was a block that, you know, or a set of blocks that actually did something right down the center of the block as opposed to one side or the other. There's only like a couple blocks that really work that way, and that would be like something like this. Oops. They have something in the center here. Different. Okay, so what if we did something like that? Oh, you know, a problem I've got though is look how tall, look at where this is, and the fact that I need to put blocks over the top of these thrusters, or would definitely like to. But then that would interfere with this because that's sitting down lower. But sitting down lower is great, so this turret could shoot backwards above it. Then again, I gotta ask the question too, how risky would this be if these were not covered up? And the other question is it true that these turrets will fire over thin blocks yet? Or is that, it wasn't the case prior, and that's why I'm very skeptical of it, but I have heard that some change was made to allow them to do that now. I guess I'm going to have to take that into the field and find out, beyond reasonable doubt, though. But for now, I'll leave it like this. It can all be changed. Okay, big feature over here is going to be a drone hatch. Drone hatch is going to, I prefer to use a standard 3x3 door for it. And it would be nice to have it offset at least a block row away from the artillery. So let's just kind of fit where that would go. Okay, so something like that. Because this is a heavier tank too, I might run two doors. Basically a top door and a bottom door. Now in this case, this artillery does shoot at a block row higher, so I believe I could get away with adding a trim row above what's here. Let's just grab a couple doors a minute and find out how that's going to work out. That would be another thing I would really like to see in the game too, is HV and SV's alternative doors. There's not much selection. You do have a couple of these glass ones, which also are not airtight, and then basically just this one with two different widths. If I did this right and doubled up the doors, which I have done on other heavier tanks, that kind of looks cool too, I think. But let's see. Okay, so if I put a door there, it would be there. Let's put a door there, and then there'd be a second door there, and then I can get some trim blocks in and around this, some real thin ones. So let's see what we want to use for this. Oh, however, I better check. Is there a, oh, there is a solution for that. Cool. So yeah, there's a corner block that fits there, which that's great. So that can make this actually work out. The reason why I left the centers open is I was thinking of trying to do something a little different there. I gotta take advantage of any part of detail I can get into this, simply to try to get like that welded look in here if possible. Alright, so here I guess I'm just gonna, I don't want to overdo this. I could run it all the way back, but I think I'd rather just have it in a smaller part. Whoops. There we go. Or do that there. That's kind of cool. Could actually rotate that around the other way. Have that fit here as well. Just so I know on the inside, I'm going to get rid of blocks that are hidden right now. A lot of those would be added back because I do plan on having like a double, like 2 layers on the top, and there'll be a lot of layers on the front of block and defense. Alright, so we've got this part here. What can be done here now? Okay, let's start there and take out this row, and then try to do some tricks to angle that in a bit. Maybe like that. I'm trying to keep it so it's the same width as what you see in those other areas, except for here, which maybe we'll do a little something that extends over. Alright, so next thing I probably ought to do is figure out where the back door is going to go. Now we're going to assume this is the floor for now. And we built up around that 3 blocks. That would fit in a door. Again, probably double back door as well. So I'll do it something like that, and then that. Okay, now, what can we do with the blocks to try to make this look neater? We're gonna need a, actually below here too, to attach a ramp nicely. I'm probably gonna do something like this there. And let's go for this this block here again. Sides. And then these blocks here can probably also change so they can meet up to that. And I'll replace that one with the bigger one. And now we've got a nice little angled thing going on there. On the inside though, those blocks are not working out too well anymore. So let's do this here. Alright, and let's try some thins. Or not a thin, but one of these. So I kind of like it's these little fine detail things, you know, when you're like doing a trim around something, or you get this one edge here that lines up all the way around. Now, obviously, it goes thicker on that side, but that gives you some nice little options on being able to texture and color like a lip around, or like just a trim piece around the thruster area, which I'm trying to have. Yeah, this is all coming together here really wonky is the problem. Oh, actually on these areas here too need some help. Not sure how I want to do this, or if I even like that. What if it did that, and then here went from that to this, or this. Is there any good solution here? I don't know if I want that ridge there. So let's just try that. And then that can be a full block. Getting kind of a general look of how it's sitting right now. I actually want to do more with this, so maybe like that instead. And technically could build that out a little bit. Nah, let's try something. Put in that. Swap out this to maybe that instead, and put in a little angle piece there. Alright, so another thing too, if you're new to the game, you might not know this, and it has to do with adding ramps. Ramps are weird when you try to place them, and what I always do with ramps, and you almost have to, is to build a block row below it, and that allows you to properly position the ramp. But if you just try to put it on the row that you want it intended on, like right here, without this row of blocks, maybe I'll shut up. Well, okay, I know, yeah, okay. Here it is. So say I want to get this ramp on here and I'm trying to put it there. It won't let me, and I can twist it around all I want and nothing will happen. Good. And the only way I can line this up is build a temporary row of blocks below it. And then I can line up the ramp correctly on the block row that I actually want it to be on. Like that. And then get rid of your temporary blocks. So last part up here, what can happen up top, and this is dangerously close to where I got this drone hatch too. It's almost too far back, isn't it? In relation to where the door is. What options? I cannot do the 5x5. I guess I technically could move that artillery one block forward. I think. No. No, it interferes with those other turrets. Okay, so the artillery stays. The drone hatch needs to come back in a block though, so I'm gonna have to butt that right up next to the artillery. It kind of sucks. I didn't really want to do that. If I didn't do that though, it would be problematic. Or put in a skinnier drone hatch door. That kind of throws all this off now, doesn't it? Alright, so let's try something different here. How about these? There and there. And that. You got that little fine metal shaping stuff, which is really cool because then you can color this separately from this and make this stand out more. But I think I don't know, maybe these, maybe those parts there should also match. Alright, so that's better. Now we've got an actual wall here. Let's try to do something with the blocks in this area. But you know what? It's Skaar too. And I can use curves and things too. So I was kind of wondering if one wouldn't be a bad idea. Something like I did to the back of the crawler. Added in something that kind of looks like a tank. Like a fuel tank. So I'm wondering if something like that couldn't be done here as well. Just to give it a little break up and something different to look at. Okay, and then these can actually be returned or fattened up a little bit. Like that. Could probably do the same thing on the bottom then too. Keep it uniform. Alright, so I'll give this thing some gas and raise it off the ground a little bit so I can see the bottom better. Okay. Alright, so bottom. So I'm trying to avoid having any cargo extensions on this visible or exposed on any part of the hull due to the qualification of being a heavy tank, at least in my mind. You know, I might do that with a smaller, lighter tank and have cargo extensions as part of the hull, but a heavy tank, I don't really want to do such things. So I'll just, for now, assume all this is going to be combat steel on the bottom as well. On a tank, you're probably not going to see the bottom a lot. Probably you'll see the bottoms a lot more on HVs and SVs and CVs, but doesn't mean that you can ignore the bottom and just fill it in with flat blocks. That's kind of boring. Okay. And I can't say for sure, too, that some of these HV engines may need to be relocated or moved or tweaked depending on how this thing comes out in the end, which is certainly a possibility, but it's hard to know until you get the whole thing built and storage in it to know how it's going to actually work. Just doing some things right now to get some kind of shaping in on the bottom. I'm always rotating these blocks too. You probably see me do this a lot, so I can see, especially with combat steel, it's easy to see that there is a unique texture on this side and then the other side, which will be the visible ones. And that's why I try to make sure I rotate them correctly the first time, which can save a lot of time later on if planning to use them with different colors and things. Same thing with this block. I got to make sure that this angle is unique from the bottom of it, which it is in this case. And then let's see, on the front, you know what? I need more of those. That doesn't really line up very well with my existing seam, but it's okay. So on the insides here too, could try some weird things like use these blocks and then like a full block in the middle to make it kind of like it indents in and comes out. One more area here. Let's do a little bit more of this, I think. Or I haven't used much in curves. Nah, let's not do curves. Not there. Maybe in the center of this, though. So in the center, what if I did something like this? Okay. Do not like the side profile on this. I guess, you know, it's functional, but I got to think of what I can do to try to make that neater looking, I think. Probably my big hang up on it. I could add a lot if I was able to add some trim rows and things like that. But again, this is more about function than it is about looks. Looks is going to be kind of the afterthought. It does look pretty tough, but the shape isn't, you know, anything I would write home about. Well, alright, so we're at this stage here now. I guess the video's probably been going on a little longer than I want again, so I may not try to texture this right now. That would take too much time. I certainly would like to get more body detail into it, though. Now that's the thing. Um, I could make this kind of neater looking, but it would make the tank a block wider, because one thing I thought about doing is try to build some like little things and have these turrets stick out another block, and then I could add trim blocks and things on the side here and keep that out of range, or not obstructed by those, which I think it might add to the overall looks, but it is going to make it wider. Speaking of, I got to see how this thing will line up right now to that SV mover work in progress as well. Let's see, large HV mover. And this will give me a good idea. If it fits in here and I got some extra width, maybe I can do that other idea. And basically, if it fits in here too, it also fit in a 5x9 hangar door, which I also want this to be able to fit into. A little crooked here for sure. Let's like that, and we'll just land it. Oh, I don't have any landing gear on it, but that's all right. Well, to be honest, I think I can do that. I think it can be that extra block wider. A quick look at where it's at on CPU. So we're a little shy of 60,000. Big parts that need to go in here yet would be a shield. And then, of course, a lot of storage, and at least one. I would like to get one constructor in here at least. I mean, if you're out and about and you're running out of fuel, you can always chop trees with this thing, have this process that into biofuel, and start running the tank off from it. That is the point. Not so much that you're going to want to craft whatever these can craft in the field, but biofuel is kind of neat. It does have a lot of space in here too. Now a lot of this is going to be filled in. It will lose interior space for sure, especially on the front here with all the armor and stuff. But let me, I'm going to pop in one of those and one of these, and that would have been taxid tank. Just trying to get an idea what kind of CPU I've got after all these parts are put in here. Not all of these require much CPU though, so I'm not too worried about some of this stuff. Detector 50 cents, not worth checking. Okay, what else would it need? How much CPU are these? 95. God, they're pretty light too. None. Doesn't say that it takes any. Armor locker, nothing. Oh, sort of storage, which doesn't take that much CPU. I don't think there's any other big parts I really need to put in here that are CPU hogs. So what does that put this at? 76,000. I don't think I'm gonna have any problem with CPU whatsoever on this. Good. I on some builds, I purposely screwed up, I think, because I was trying so hard for CPU at a certain tier range. I made it worse than I wanted to. I'm just kind of checking. Oh, RCS. RCS is something. Just kind of seeing how this thing maneuvers. It's going to get heavier yet, so it's just going to keep on slowing down. possible, I might try to sneak in some more thrusters as well. This is just kind of a test here. Slap in like 8 RCS on this. Even though I think that they'd probably be more towards the middle when I actually do it. Mainly looking at the turning. The strafing's good. Turning is not bad. Now, at least. Well, okay. That's good enough for today. I did get the body at least done on it. Obviously, I got some texturing to do on a couple different ships here pretty soon. Space Carrier is still taking precedence until that is done and released. But well, this is well on its way. That will, you know, this is well on its way as well. So those two creations, I have the other HV for the Skaar, and then I've got the defense tower also for the Skaar. So that's actually 4 different creations yet to 2 of them to finish and 2 others just to release. So they'll eventually make it to the workshop. Again, I try to space out releases by a week. Space Carrier's next. So that would probably put any Skaar creations after that, 2 weeks away yet. And I do that because I don't want to hog up the workshop. And it's a lot of work to release all this stuff too. But hogging up the workshop, for instance, if they do well, they'll be in the spotlight. And other people's creations might not be in the spotlight. If I'm piggy and have too much out there, I just want to avoid doing that. So that's the whole reason I don't want to really release like a bunch of stuff at once. I could just like one day like, hey, here's 4 new Skaar creations, but yeah, it's don't like to do that. So anyway, that's probably it for me on the this week on showing videos. Next week I'll be back again, hopefully with some new stuff and stuff to show you. And probably save this tank, and I'll keep on working on this in the video thing. Probably tackling the texturing of the body next time, which is probably boring. So maybe I'll just show part of that and do the rest of it off screen. And then tackling the interior of it to try to get that all situated. One thing I have definitely changed over the time when I'm building things is before even though like this hull is completely symmetrical, in the past I would have interiors a lot of times pretty close to symmetrical. I mean, maybe a different part on each side because you have to, like a warp core, but I've been really getting away from that. I've been trying to go with much more asymmetrical interiors now. I think they feel better. They feel more realistic. Even on CVs, if you notice, like the newer CVs that I've made, they all kind of shift the interior over, and they're not trying to be so symmetrical. I mean, the hangars kind of appear that way, but they're actually completely different in the walls and stuff. And I'm gonna keep on going with that too. However, I don't particularly like to build asymmetrical moving things necessarily. Like this is kind of, yeah, it's all right. I think it came out okay, and it is truly asymmetrical, but I wouldn't want to do that too often, especially if it, you know, to me, I just kind of look at this and like this would be a nightmare flying. But if I look at it as in a perspective of how a drone flies, it really wouldn't make a big difference because you got a computer constantly adjusting the missing thruster, the lift of all these thrusters. So anytime it's like not right, it would keep it balanced. But then again, I also wouldn't think that this thing would be able to move very quickly either, like forward. Nothing like a jet or anything like that that's actually using aerodynamics to move. Um, anyway, you all have yourself a good weekend. I will talk to you later.